Forgot to do that. So then we will go over updating the mitigation strategy, hazard mitigation assistance grants, plan maintenance, and the next steps. The Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 requires local governments to adopt a natural hazard mitigation plan to maintain eligibility for FEMA hazard mitigation assistance funds. This plan update is for a multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan covering the unincorporated county, participating incorporated cities, and the public school district. There are 9 tasks to complete the update. Tasks 1 through 5 are completed. So task 6 will be develop a mitigation strategy. Task 7 to review and adopt the plan. Task 8, keep the plan current. And task 9 to create a safe and resilient community. Participating jurisdictions, review requirements. So in order to be a plan participant, each jurisdiction was asked to designate a representative to serve on the Hazard Mitigation Planning Committee. This is the 3rd meeting. Provide data for and assist in the development of the updated risk assessment that describes how various hazards impact your jurisdiction. Provide data to describe current capabilities. Develop and update mitigation actions, at least one, specific to your jurisdiction. Provide comments on plan drafts as requested. Inform the public, local officials, and other interested parties about the planning process and provide opportunities for them to comment on the plan and formally adopt the mitigation plan. So here is a chart that shows where all of the jurisdictions are regarding their participation requirements. Everyone is all good except, looks like Allendale, we still need the status of previous actions from them. So we will continue to reach out. Maybe Abby, if you can try to get in touch with Kevin about this, that would be great. If we need to resend the documents, we can. Does anybody have any questions on the chart and where your jurisdiction is on meeting its requirements for plan participation? Okay, hearing none. We'll move on. So public survey results, 107 surveys were completed. That's amazing. That's probably a record or something. No, I don't know. But anyway, that's really awesome. Your efforts to collect in-kind match led to an unbelievable number of public surveys being completed. We've talked to SEMA about what you guys did to get your match, and they love the ideas of getting youth involved and going to the different activities to collect match and hand out surveys. So kudos to Abby and Roberta and all the volunteers for working on this. Okay. This is what are the questions? We used Google surveys this time around. So it looks a little different than if we had used SurveyMonkey. But one of the questions on your public survey that we are required to ask is to indicate your opinion on the likelihood for each of the hazards listed below, how it would impact your jurisdiction. So as you can see, there's a lot of unlikelies. Unlikely seems to be the response for levee and dam failure, earthquakes, it's a little bit lower, and then land subsidence and sinkholes. And then the highly likely looks like severe thunderstorms, severe winter weather. Those were the highest, along with tornadoes and extreme temperature. And then the next question we asked was to rate the magnitude of each of these hazards' impact on your jurisdiction. And you can kind of see there, catastrophic tornadoes was ranked really high for catastrophic, negligible, levee failure, dam failure. You can see all those there. But again, the response was really great compared to what we've had on most of our plans. So it was good to have that extra information. All right, updating the mitigation strategy. As a reminder, goals are used to describe what you want to accomplish with the hazard mitigation plan. On the other hand, actions are specific activities you will do to accomplish these goals. The goals listed on this slide were reviewed during the last meeting. It was agreed upon that these goals would not be revised. So goal number 1, protect the lives, property, and livelihoods of all citizens in the present and future. And goal 2, ensure continued operation of government and emergency functions and is in a disaster for the present and future. Mitigation actions are a very crucial part to the hazard mitigation plan. By implementing specific actions that are aimed at reducing damage from a disaster, communities are likely to recover faster as well as experience less loss. Mitigation actions have long-term cumulative benefits that can greatly increase the preparedness of your community for a disaster. Some actions are low cost and easy to implement. Others require funding through grants. Not all actions are eligible for FEMA grants, but there are many opportunities to obtain funding. These actions need to be relevant to your jurisdiction and must focus on mitigation, not response. The plan isn't about responding to a disaster, it's about reducing loss from one. Updating and developing mitigation actions. At the last meeting, jurisdictions fill out action status worksheets. These forms help us figure out what actions are working for your community and which ones are not. FEMA will not approve the hazard mitigation plan without these, so please get them turned in if you have not. Reach out to Steve or I if you have any questions. Next, we will create new actions. These new actions need to meet SMART standards, meaning that they are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Vague actions will not be accepted by FEMA. New actions can be created by using resources from FEMA, problem statements from the risk assessment, guidance from grants, and from surveys sent out to communities. Okay, previous actions. At meeting number 2, communities were instructed to completed action status worksheets. This table summarizes the number of actions in each status, completed, deleted, continue, in progress, etc. from each jurisdiction. So you can see here what each jurisdiction did for their continuing actions. Chapter 4 of the Hazard Mitigation Plan will include all continuing and new actions. The completed or deleted actions will be included in a table in an appendix. Jurisdictions with actions marked as status not reported need to return their worksheets. Please contact Steve or I if you need a new document emailed to you. So that's really just Allendale in this case. So do y'all have any questions so far? I'm going to hand the screen over to Steve, and he's going to continue on with tonight's presentation.
There I am. All right. Getting ready. Okay. My portion of the presentation tonight will be to talk about problem statements from the risk assessment that was done on Worth County to try to identify those hazards and those natural hazards that are the greatest risk to the residents of the county. Hopefully they'll correspond with the survey results, and I think they do as far as what we need to tackle. On the slide in front of you now is the are the natural hazards that were included in your update that we agreed on the previous meeting. They match the hazards from the state plan. So except for I guess it is sinkholes. I was trying to remember if we had located some sinkholes in Worth County, but I think not. So anyway, I will go through the problem statements that came from each hazard and try to match them up with the actions that were in the last update to the plan and see if we can find out if there's any gaps in our plan that need to be filled in. So the first natural hazard is flooding, and flooding hasn't been as big of hazard in Worth County the last few years as it has been in some of the other counties in the region. Maybe roadway flooding is a concern, and that could be reduced by increased culvert sizing or road elevation. So what we have here are a list, and I know it's pretty small font, but thought maybe on the computers you might be able to read it. I know it wouldn't be good for an in-person meeting, but maybe we can get through this, and we will be providing a copy of this presentation for you to look at a little bit closer at afterwards. But these are the actions that were in your previous plan that were returned to us saying that you wanted to continue them from some of the jurisdictions. So as Amy talked about, the two goals, you have the two goals 1 and 2 from your plan. The first one has to deal with protecting the lives of people and their property. And the goals that start with the number 1 are supposed to be, the actions that start with the number 1 are supposed to be meeting that goal. The actions that start with number 2 then are to address the goal of continuing the operation of the government in a disaster situation. The second number refers to the objective for that goal, and then the actions are numbered 1, 2, and 3, and so forth as we need them. What I tried to do is that there's several actions that meet flooding, and they're trying to be listed on this slide here. The ones that I put in a little bit bigger type and in bold are more specific just to flooding. The other actions will also work for other natural hazards in the plan and will show up again on slides for other hazards. So we do have something that's going to meet our National Flood Insurance Program requirement to have an action regarding that program in the plan for those communities that participate. And that's talking about the maps that are being updated. And then we have down here, we have the road elevation and culvert sizing that we talked about on the previous slide. So we do have an action in your plan. I think that was put in there last year in the update. So we are meeting those. If you can see any other gaps in this that you think would help mitigate the hazard of flooding for your county, please, put them in the chat, interrupt me, email Amy or I about those so we can work those into this plan. Next natural hazard is levee failure. For Worth County, there aren't any Army Corps of Engineer levees that are monitored and inventoried. So we really don't have a good listing or an inventory of the levees that are in Worth County. We know that they exist. Most of them are what they call the agricultural low head levees that protect farmland, and there is no inspection requirement of levees, so we don't really know if they're being maintained that well or not. So to meet that concern, we do have a thing in here, an action in here about the monitoring data and records and so forth to work forward to keep a data set for the structures at risk. So we are trying to address that concern in the plan. But again, consider if there's anything else that needs to be included in this update. Dam failure. There's no emergency action plan on file for 2 of the 3 high hazard dams. They're not legally required to have that emergency action plan. It could be voluntarily done, or it could be a local requirement that they do that. It would just add another layer of safety to know exactly what structures would be at risk if there would be a catastrophic failure of one of those high hazard dams. They're called a high hazard dam because they've been deemed that there could be a loss of life if there would be a catastrophic failure of that dam. Another possible thing to think about that came up in the risk assessment was there are high hazard dams on the major rivers that go through Worth County that come out of Iowa. There are dams on some of those tributaries that lead into those. You might want to consider getting some kind of communication system set up to get some warning from them if they knew of any problems developing or emergency, that they could contact your county so you could get out the warning to your residents of flood waters or, you know, coming down the rivers from a dam failure. You do have an action in your update about collecting and processing data about the dams. So that's kind of covered. It would just be if you'd want to consider putting something in to worry about those that are outside of the county upstream dams. Earthquakes, the next natural hazard covered in your plan. Older multi-storied structures are the most susceptible. If these are unoccupied, perhaps they should be looked into being demolished, or if they're, you know, being used, maybe repaired, just to avoid any possible loss of life in case there would be some kind of a tremor that would occur in the county. We do not really have an action that I could say just is for earthquakes in your plan. I mean, these actions that I've listed on here from the plan are more general and are applied to several other hazards that are in your plan. Down here at the bottom in the white type are a couple of possible suggestions for actions if anyone would want to consider writing them up for your jurisdiction using the SMART language that FEMA is requiring for us to have for the actions. Something, you know, participate in the, you know, great shakeout drills to, you know, educate the public about earthquake risk, and also maybe develop a demolition plan for potential dangerous structures within your county. Drought. Problem statement concerns were education programs about the conservation of water and ensuring interconnectivity of water systems for each community. We do not have any specific drought related actions in the plan. Again, they're the more general ones, more having to do with education and involving outreach before, you know, anything happens. These two are suggestions at the bottom. Perhaps develop an ordinance to restrict the use of public water resources for non-essential use, you know, washing cars and so forth when it's a drought emergency, or perhaps establish an agreement with other communities, other water systems, so that in case your location is running out of water in a drought situation, there is another community that still has water that could share it with you. Again, these are possibilities to include in the plan. please remember that think of these actions as, like Amy said, they're supposed to be, doable. You're supposed to have an idea of time when they would get done by. I like to think, it's kind of like an educated wish list, a really thought out wish list that you would like. You're not required to do any of these actions that you put in here, but if they are in there, they do help you qualify for any funds that become available to help you complete those actions. Extreme temperature, it seems like that's been in the news nationally more here lately. If there are increased temperatures, that's going to put additional stress on your utilities and other public services. Even the highways are more likely to buckle in extreme heat situations and so forth. Energy efficiency should be prioritized in new construction. We do have some extreme temperature actions in your plan already. You've got one to identify those that are most susceptible, like the very old and the very young are more susceptible to extreme temperatures. And it's kind of a two-part there. You've got that you want to develop a plan to contact those identified. And these others that are down here in bolded, again, these are ones that are applied to many others on the plan, like assist the critical facilities in developing their emergency operations and work to secure power backup plans for communications and so forth. We want to make sure that you have, I think it comes up somewhere else, backup power. So if we don't have that action on another natural hazard, we should make sure that we've got something in there about the procuring generators where needed. Okay, for severe thunderstorms, the problem statements brought up a couple concerns about to continue to update and expand the warning systems and the availability of storm shelters for all communities in the plan's jurisdictions. Right now, the plan has an action about notifying the general public. There have been technological advances in warning systems. We need to be sure that we continue to employ those as we can afford to and can work into our systems that we have set up. The weather spotter training program, it's good to have local eyes on the storms. Continue that. Last update we put in there about the storm shelter or safe rooms and the school remodeling, and also about communities trying to come up with community shelters or severe weather safe rooms. Moving on to the next hazard, severe winter weather. Usually this is the secondary effects of the winter weather. After you have all the snow and ice, then you have power outages or impassable roads. So it would be good to make sure we have educational programs about preparedness and personal generator operation safety and so forth, so we don't have people getting injured or causing problems using generators that they're not familiar with. In the plan now, we have about the weather alerts. We have about identifying the individuals. We do have about the preparedness information. So that's all good. So just be thinking, if you think of anything else that ought to go in this plan, try to get it in there before we finalize it and send it off to SEMA. Tornadoes. Again, the warning technologies have improved, need to keep updating, and construction of safe rooms could be a life-saving investment in your community, in the school. I don't think there's anything here that we haven't already talked about already. So again, it's just you've got these in the plan. Now, if you can figure out some funding for them, making them, of course, if you make it FEMA endorsed safe room safe, that really adds to the cost of structures. I know, I think it was the Boy Scout camp down around St. Joe or something. They were able to get grants to help fortify their bathroom facilities at the camp or whatever, to make them safe room compliant, so that they have a place for the campers to go in case there is storms and catch them out there where there's nowhere else to go for shelter. That's an idea. Last natural hazard I have to talk about tonight is the wildfire. It's not too much a concern for Worth County. There are quite a few acres that are burned up accidentally every year from fires that accidentally get started or get out of control from those that are started unintentionally. Again, just maybe educating people and making sure they're satisfactorily warned ahead of time. You do have the bit about the information resources, other possibilities for actions to include in your update would be ordinance could, a jurisdiction could consider having ordinance to ban open fires in certain situations, or also have a policy where someone is responsible for alerting and posting on social media and local media alerts about the hazard when it's very dry and windy conditions, like often occur in this neck of the woods. So again, just think about any gaps in the plans, actions, and try to make this the best plan it can be. The next slide talks about ideas for actions, and this is a book that can be downloaded. It's a PDF form, or I think we can put this in the email that we send out to you, so it can be there, or in the chat tonight, so you know about it, so you can be able to get to it. So again, anybody have any comments tonight? Go ahead and unmute yourself and let us know about it. We can take note of it. If you want to act on any of my suggestions, just let me know. We could write those up, send those out, get them approved by the committee for inclusion next time. Again, actions can be apply to the county, or they can apply to individual jurisdictions or to individual school districts. They don't have to apply to every jurisdiction across the board for this plan. So I'm going to switch back to Amy now, and she's going to take over for showing the rest of the presentation. Thank you for your time.
Okay, so does anybody have any questions, comments? If not, we're going to keep going, just going to keep moving. So here are the results to the public survey that was open through June. This is just another question on the survey where we asked people for what projects of those listed here that they think would benefit the jurisdiction, their jurisdictions. So it looks like The top response was new tornado safe room construction, followed closely by soil erosion stabilization and structural retrofitting of existing buildings to add a tornado safe room. So tornado safe rooms scored pretty high there with both options. Does anybody see any, are you surprised by this? Do you think this tends to be a popular response from what we have seen with other counties as well? So again, you can unmute or type in the chat anytime you have something you'd like to add or any questions. So we will move along then to talk about mitigation action plans. So what you're seeing on the screen now is an example of an action worksheet. If you have filled out the action item assessment, then some of the information you provided will already be on the worksheet. The items in the red box are your responsibility to fill out. This worksheet is used to get information on how action items will be implemented. Who is responsible for implementing the action? How will the community obtain funding for this action? When will the action be completed, etc.? All these questions will be answered through the worksheet. It is our goal to send these out to the jurisdictions and school district this week. We will provide instructions will be provided, and areas that you will need to fill out will be highlighted. The information on the action worksheet must be included in the plan for all continuing and new actions. Okay, plan maintenance. Now we will discuss the maintenance for the hazard mitigation plan. This section will include who, how, and when will the plan be monitored, evaluated, and updated. Hazard mitigation plans must be updated every 5 years per requirements set by FEMA. The maintenance process must be included in writing to ensure that the mitigation plan does not become outdated. The writing process includes who will oversee updating the plan, how it will be updated, and when the process of writing the update will begin. This section also includes how the public will be involved in the maintenance of the plan and how mitigation action items will be incorporated into other planning mechanisms. Planning mechanisms can include emergency management plans, local legislation, local comprehensive plans, building codes, community rating system, and floodplain management plans. Now is the time to decide the who, how, and when. In the current plan, it was decided that the Mitigation Planning Committee will meet annually and after a state or federally declared hazard event to monitor progress and update the mitigation strategy. The Worth County Emergency Management Director will be responsible for initiating the plan reviews and will invite members of the Mitigation Planning Committee to the meeting. Additionally, the plan will continue to be updated every 5 years in coordination with standards set by SEMA and FEMA. If there are changes you would like to have made to this, please say so now by unmuting or typing in the chat. So that's what's in your current plan that's set to expire in a few months. So if you're okay with how that's worded and what that states, then we can keep it in this next plan update as well. Okay, next is to decide how the public will be involved in the plan maintenance process. The current plan states that information about the annual reviews will be posted in the local newspapers as well as on the Worth County website following each annual review of the mitigation plan. When the Mitigation Planning Committee reconvenes for the next 5-year update, it will coordinate with all stakeholders participating in the planning process. Public notice will be posted and public participation will be actively solicited at a minimum through available website postings and press releases to local media outlets, primarily newspapers. If there are changes you would like to have made to this, please say so now by unmuting or typing in the chat. Okay, plan implementation and maintenance, a little more about that before we get to move on. So next, the Mitigation Planning Committee must decide how the mitigation strategy will be incorporated into other planning mechanisms. In the current plan, it states that where possible, plan participants, including school and special districts, will use existing plans and/or programs to implement hazard mitigation actions. Based on the capability assessments of the participating jurisdictions, communities in Worth County will continue to plan and implement programs to reduce losses to life and property from hazards. Again, if there are changes you would like to have made to this, please say so now by unmuting or typing in the chat. Okay, so after this meeting, we'll ask all the jurisdictions, including the school district, to go through their action worksheets once we get those sent out to you to update information on the mitigation action items. Use resources in your jurisdiction to collect information. This may be done by contacting other departments or organizations. When the worksheets are complete, please email those back to myself. All right. Hazard mitigation assistance grants. Here is a list of hazard mitigation assistance grants offered by FEMA. These grants were discussed in the previous meetings. For more information on these grants, please visit the FEMA website or contact Heidi Carver, State Hazard Mitigation Officer. These grants can be used to help implement and complete mitigation actions in your community. Other funding sources. Aside from FEMA grants, there are other sources of funding that can be used to implement mitigation action items. Some of these sources include USDA, U.S. Department of Commerce, U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. Okay, so the plan will include a public comment period, actually two. The first comment period will be for the committee members, so that's all of you. So you will receive an email when we get this posted and when it's open for public comment. And then what we will ask is that you take some time to kind of flip through it, scroll through it, and let us know if you see any concerns, any mistakes, anything like that. You can respond with an email of any issues that you see with the draft. And then, so that'll be November 1st through 14th is what we're shooting for. November 16th and 30th will be the final public comment period. The draft will be posted on the Regional Council's website, and we will include that information in the email we send out. We will also send out press releases regarding the final public comment period to your newspapers. Homework and next steps. So your action worksheets are due back to Steve and I by August 9th. Then we will send out adoption resolutions. We may email those this week. It probably won't be this week, but that's our goal. And then we need those back by November 14th is kind of the deadline we set for that, because we have to have all the adopted resolutions before we can submit the draft of the plan to SEMA. So school districts and local governing bodies are all required to complete this task to be plan participants. So we'll have to have that adoption resolution from the school district and all the local governing bodies. So by December 8th, we will submit the plan to SEMA. And then by May of 2022, we anticipate FEMA's approval. So, does anybody have any questions, comments? We will send out, like I said, a recap of the meeting that'll have the Zoom link, because we are recording. We'll have the PowerPoint, so you can go back through that if you didn't catch anything today, or if it was kind of hard to see as we were moving through it quickly. So be on the lookout for that, as well as action worksheets that we're going to try to get out to you pretty quickly. If you don't have any questions or comments, we want to thank you for joining us and for helping us with this planning process. Steve and I will stick around here for a couple minutes just in case anybody has any questions or wants to chat with us. But otherwise, don't forget to send us a timesheet, please, and feel free to round up to an hour, even though we're not quite at an hour.